अच्छा, डॉक्टर सोमवीर।
यस सर।
हाँ, मैं एमएल अग्रवाल बोल रहा हूँ।
यस सर।
मेरे को लगता है कि 50 से ज्यादा लोग आ गए हैं। वी कैन स्टार्ट द टॉक।
ओके सर, श्योर। Good afternoon to one and all present here in this session. And to continue with the momentum of sustainability, we have with us Dr. Kiran Bala, who is well-known speaker with the deep knowledge of algal system and their application to protect and conserve environment. Algae are a diverse group of photosynthetic organisms with a profound bioremediation potential and industrial applications that can reduce the cost of expenditure on energy as well as a fuel. And algae have been applied to the various applications from fuel to medicines and to the wastewater treatment. So the potential applications of phycoremediation have been instigated laboratories to reinforce the development of algal-based technologies for better exploitation of their bioremediation potential and bioproduct generation ability. So we have with us Dr. Kiran Bala to enlighten us about the algae, that how this algae can be utilized as a bioremediation option in this present scenario, and what will be its prospective to attain environmental sustainability. So without further ado, I am pleased to introduce Dr. Kiran Bala as our eminent speaker for today's session to address the participants. Dr. Kiran Bala is currently working as Associate Professor in discipline of Biosciences and Biomedical Engineering at IIT Indore, and she completed her MSc with gold medal in environmental sciences and PhD in environmental science and engineering from Guru Jameshwari University of Science and Technology, Hisar. And she has worked with the Energy and Resource Institute, Delhi, Anna University, Chennai, and Devi Ahilya Vishwavidyalaya, Indore, as a researcher before joining IIT Indore. She has various fellowship or awards such as DBT Women Scientist, Dr. D.S. Kothari Postdoctoral Fellow Award, DST Inspire Faculty Fellow Award, and DST Early Career Research Award in his credit. Dr. Kiran Bala research is broadly focused on development of integrated technology, which takes nutrients from wastewater, carbon dioxide from the industrial flue gases, and give us biofuel, which is a renewable source of energy. So with this brief introduction, I welcome you, ma'am, and request you to please address the participants.
Thank you so much, Dr. Somveer. Thank you so much for this nice introduction also. So shall I start sharing my screen?
Yes, ma'am. Option is there on the bottom.
Okay. Yes, yes. No, it is not showing. So shall I stop my video, because during presentation, I think my video is not required.
Yes, ma'am, you may.
Okay, thank you so much. And now let me, but this PPT option is not. Can you see my presentation?
Ma'am, presentation is not there, but your window is means clearly visible.
Yes, so but it is not showing how to link it with my PPT.
First open your PPT, and then after means do this screen sharing. That will help to means share your screen.
Okay, wait a minute. Let me try again. It is open, but it is still not showing this option. I don't know how come.
Ma'am, first open this PPT and then after go for screen sharing. Means some of the options means which file you just want to share. It is asking, and then after select one that you
Yeah,
want.
it is only asking for my this email. Google Chrome only it is asking, and no other files.
And your PPT is means opened.
Yes, PPT is open. Usually what we do like this only, but it is not showing that.
I can do one thing.
Mhm.
You just share this PPT with me, and I will
Okay.
move this
I,
slide.
I'm sending an email to you with this PPT, right? You just please open
Sure.
this. So have you received that email?
Not now, ma'am. Which email you have used to share this presentation? Ma'am?
IIT email only.
Okay, okay. Yes, yes, got it. Okay. Is it visible, ma'am?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah. So shall I start now?
Yes, ma'am. Sure.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm good afternoon, everyone. And I'm so sorry for this delay due to this technical issues. And I'm not very familiar with the Zoom actually. That is the problem. Usually we use Google Meet or other like Microsoft TM, etc. So I'm so sorry for that. But let's come to the topic now. So this is about phycotechnology, and From my PhD onwards, I started working with algae, and algae is now very close to my heart, and I'm exploring, because after this presentation you will also feel that, oh my god, algae has so many applications and it is too much beneficial to us. So this is there, right? So what is just a brief introduction myself, because Dr. Somveer has given a nice introduction, but I want to tell about myself that after my PhD, I joined TERI, the Energy and Resources Institute in Delhi, and that is one of the very good institute which works in the area of energy. And even that Dr. Pachauri, he shared Nobel Prize in 2008. So because of that, we were like, TERI was very famous, and I was there in during that duration. Like in 2007 I joined, but I was there for a short duration. But in 2000, that time when this Nobel Prize was declared, and so we were like, as a team, we were very proud of him, that he's doing so much good work. So that was TERI, and then after some time I moved to Chennai and joined Anna University. There worked as Dr. D.S. Kothari postdoctoral fellow in Anna University in the Center for Environmental Studies, working with algae again. And then we came to Indore due to personal issues. Like my husband actually moved to Indore, so I also thought that let me also try something in Indore, and I joined Devi Ahilya Vishwavidyalaya as women scientists, so which was financially supported by DBT. And and then finally I got a chance to enter in Indian Institute of Technology, Indore. So I'm lucky in that sense. So but from these so many years, like I joined my PhD in 2003. So from that 2003 until date, I am working with algae only. So and sometimes I talk to people that till retirement I'll be working with algae, because it has so much potential. So we can explore many things out of it. So next slide, Somveer, if you can go. Yeah. So first, I want to talk about IIT Indore. So everyone knows that IIT Indore, it is located in Madhya Pradesh, and recently this World University Rankings, it has ranked IIT Indore third in India, which is a great achievement for us, because it came into establishment in 2009 only, and in just 10-11 years, like we have in our teaching and research, we have performed so well that our ranking is remarkable, right? Next slide. Okay, so this slide is just about the brief introduction of IIT Indore. So IIT Indore, it is located in Madhya Pradesh, and also known as IITI. So it is an institute of national importance, which is established by Government of India in 2009. Right? So it is one of the 8 new IITs which have been started by Ministry of Education. Now it is called as Ministry of Education, earlier called Ministry of Human Resources Development, right? So, Government of India. So the institution started working from 2009 from a temporary campus. So we started our whole working from a temporary campus. We took a rented campus from Institute of Energy and Technology, which is a part of Devi Ahilya Bai University. And that time our mentoring was done by IIT Bombay. Right? So we have an area of about 500 acres, and these things are there. And from city also, we are located 25 kilometers from the heart of the city. So we are in the outskirts of Indore. And this is one of the important slide which I usually prefer to show during my presentation. So whatever work we do, whatever work I present is usually done by this group of people, which are my PhD students. So currently, it's a small group, like we have just 9 PhD students, but they work day and night, 24/7. I think they sleep algae, they eat algae, kind of thing is there in their minds. So it is all their efforts which I usually go and present to people, that what kind of work we are doing at IIT Indore. Next. Okay, so coming to the technical part, what is phycotechnology? It's kind of new term, and even sometimes people they get confused that phyco means kind of, it seems like fungus. No, but it is algae. So it is it refers to the technological applications of algae, and some of like one of the simplest example is conversion of atmospheric nitrogen into bioaccessible nitrogenous compounds by blue-green algae, which is also known as cyanobacteria, right? So phycotechnology is the technological applications of algae, just this, right? And so algae is the window of opportunity, right? There are so many applications. In next 1.5 hours, you will be also enriched with this knowledge that okay, algae has so many applications. So algae are windows of opportunity which can convert wastewater loaded with nutrients and carbon dioxide to water rich in oxygen. And simultaneously, it produces so many bioproducts. With one of them is biofuel, which can act as renewable source of energy. And if you look at so with last slide only, so if you look at this setup we have designed in our lab, and I'll talk about this setup in detail in upcoming slides. Next. So these are the just some microscopic images of algal species what we are working on. These are all the species we have isolated in our lab, and in addition to these, like in total we have till date isolated approximately 15 to 20 species. And so all these species are from Indore or MP region only, like from diverse habitats, wastewater area, soil, contaminated soil area, some from the sewage treatment plant. So like that, we are, continuously exploring new strains of algae, because, every strain has its own identity and own benefits. So that's why, we are looking forward to explore new and innovative strains, right? So just a few brief introduction of algae. What is algae? Algae is like these are the members of a group of predominantly aquatic photosynthetic organisms of kingdom Protista, right? So these are photosynthetic organisms. It means during through photosynthetic process they make their food, right? So that is photosynthetic organism. So microalgae, there are different categories of algae like micro and macro. So on the basis of their size they have been categorized like this. So mostly we at IIT Indore we work with microalgal species. So microalgae have been present on this earth as photosynthetic autotrophs for over a period of billion years, right? And the beauty is they can be both terrestrial as well as aquatic. And even in aquatic, if I talk about, they can grow in fresh water, saline water, wastewater, anything, you name it, and algae can be found there, right? So all kind of habitats it exists. And but the surrounding environment, what kind of environment it is cultivated or it is growing, it affects the properties or the composition of algae, right? So different conditions like pH, temperature, or the presence of different nutrients, etc., they all affect and even they affect significantly on its biological pathways, which directly or indirectly affect the synthesis of various algal metabolites. Because of these metabolites only we love algae, right? So various researchers, they have explored these variations, that how these variations they affect the growth period, and also how this targeted high value metabolites are being affected due to the presence of different components or different physiological things being affected due to the presence of these nutrients, or you can say contaminants, when we are talking about the wastewater environment, right? So algae as such, they are economically very important source of, if we talk about just oil, in reference to energy, or they also act as sources of food, and even a number of pharmaceutical and industrial products can also be isolated from algae, right? So briefly, algae are defined as eukaryotic organisms. They have nucleus inside them which can photosynthesize, but they lack some specialized multicellular reproductive structures like plants. That's why they are different from plants, right? That is the difference. Algae, they don't have root, stem, and leaves, right? Like plants. So, so we even, there are prokaryotic forms of algae also available, which is cyanobacteria, right? So that's why, there is they have been named as kind of bacteria. So cyanobacteria, which is blue-green algae, they are prokaryotic, right? It means they don't have even nucleus. And mainly it is green in color. Everyone knows that algae are green in color, and due to the presence of different pigments, they are green in color, like due to the presence of chlorophylls. Even they have pigment carotenoids or phycobiliproteins. So different, if you see on this slide, even there is differences in the color of algal cells, so which is due to the dominant pigment which is there, right? So sometimes we have higher quantities of phycobiliproteins. So these pigments give different tinge, different color to the algal cells, right? Next slide. So this is very important. Maybe I'll say on all the sides that it is very important, but it gives you a overall picture of what I'm going to talk about. So let's start with this, that we have the problem of domestic sewage. So I've just written here domestic sewage. Even you can write down wastewater. So it can be from industry also. So industrial effluent or domestic waste water, right? And which is after secondary treatment, we get water which is enriched in nitrates and phosphates. So that water is very useful for the growth of algae. And then if you have any industry which has flue gases coming out of, and usually flue gases, they have 13 to 15% of carbon dioxide. If we talk about the composition of flue gases, in addition to some trace gases like NOx, SOx, depending on the industry. So, but mostly like in thermal power plants, 14 to 15% carbon dioxide is found, right? So, as I said, that algae is photosynthetic. It means it needs carbon dioxide, right? So this carbon dioxide can be sent to our reactors or the cultivation ponds or whatever we are targeting, right? And these nutrients, which after I have not directly and sent this wastewater to this tank, because algae won't be able to sustain in this environment, because it may have some toxic compounds. But what algae targets are is like nitrates and phosphates. So for growth of algae, it needs nitrates and phosphates basically, right? So these nitrates and phosphates will act as nutrients and can be transferred to this reactor, which is algal growth reactor. And then even, pH, if I talk about pH and in addition to nutrients and CO2, sometimes there are effects of pH and temperature, but it can tolerate a very wide range of pH and temperature. So it varies from species to species. That's why, we are always looking forward to a new species depending on what kind of product or what kind of industry environment we are targeting, right? So this here it will grow. And then let's talk about the downstream processing of algal biomass. So what happens is this algal biomass which we are getting after kind of this wastewater treatment is very important to us, because algal cell, they are having large components like carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids inside their cells. So these all can be converted into useful products. Like carbohydrates, we can ferment them and we can get bioethanol. Proteins are, everyone know about spirulina. If you have heard about it, even it is in the market available. Spirulina tablets are there, which are very good protein source, right? And then lipids, algal lipids, they can be converted into biodiesel. And this is like biodiesel can be converted if we have a combination of saturated and unsaturated lipids from varying from C16 to C18. But if we have long chain fatty acids present, that time we can even talk about DHA and EPA. So DHA and EPA are also, a common man even know about DHA and EPA. In TV advertisements, you have seen that this Bonvita will give you DHA, which is very good for your brain, right? So only available source for DHA and EPA is fish oil. So sometimes, due to a non-vegetarian or vegetarian issues. Somvir, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. You are audible, ma'am.
Okay. If something happens, because I was getting a call, so I thought maybe you are calling me. So if something happens, so you just unmute yourself and let me know. Otherwise,
Sure. Everything is going good, ma'am.
Okay. So my slides are also moving.
Yes. Sure.
Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah. So, and then, after extraction of all these carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids, whatever biomass is left over, even we can use that biomass for biofertilizer application or even biogas application. So just feel that all the portions of algal biomass, they are too much useful to us, right? So even sometimes when we visited sewage treatment plants, so after secondary treatment we get huge quantities of sludge. So I'm not saying that anything negative about that sludge production, but we need to see how to use that whatever being generated out of it. Somvir, can I take one?
Yes, ma'am, please. Sure.
Yes, I'm so sorry. Okay, and if you look at this small paragraph which I have written here to give you this feeling that how much potential is there when we talk about carbon dioxide fixation using algae, and talking about the fuel, how much it can produce, right? You can read these two sentences, that It can fix CO2 completely from 1 gigawatt power plant and produces approximately 14,000 gallons per acre per year. So this is not my study, that's why I have given a reference at the bottom. So I have not proved it, it is already being proved. Next slide. Everyone has heard about algae, and in context to eutrophication, we like from our early childhood, like from 5th, 6th standard, eutrophication term is being introduced to us, that what is eutrophication, when a water body which is loaded with minerals and nutrients causes excessive growth of algae. This is known as eutrophication, right? So we have all the negative thoughts about algae in our minds, so that like algae always creates nuisance, it is bad smelling, and it is not even, it reduces the aesthetic value of the environment. So this is the picture, what we have in our minds usually. Next slide. But this is what we have proposed recently, that algae can help in treating the wastewater. So what usually in a treatment plant happens is, after that, these things every one of you know, because you are from environment background, so every one of you know that how wastewater treatment, what is the flow in the wastewater treatment, and what are the different sections of wastewater treatment. But whatever is there, like after secondary treatment, if we have this thing, algal ponds or algal reactors, if we put in there to just target your nitrates and phosphates before releasing that water into water bodies, right? So because if we release water loaded with these nutrients like ammonia or nitrates or phosphates, that can cause eutrophication in our natural water bodies. So before releasing this water into any natural water body, we should treat it, and we have even solution for it. So this the inoculation of algae in this, so algae plus wastewater, it can, I just told you that how it will work, and can give you loads of algal biomass, so this thing can be optimized according to the industry requirement or even our STP's requirement. There are different cultivation methods available, like what is the plan, like how much area do you have, how much money you want to put in that. On the basis of that, we have different kind of options available to cultivate algae in this pond, which can handle your water after secondary treatment, like open pond algal systems, or even I have written here high rate algal ponds. If I just explain about high rate algal ponds, how it is different from a simple algal pond. Somewhere, can you go to next slide? So this is the circular pond what we usually have. So algae we can grow here. It is not like that you have to just construct a new pond, and in this existing pond what you have, we cannot grow algae. It is not the case. So these kind of different models also we have recently published in 2014. So first one is the circular pond. There you can grow algae, but let me just give you a brief introduction of this raceway ponds, because these are the best ones and can grow higher biomass of algae. And the main thing is their depth. So they are not very deep. It is because algae needs sunlight. So if and sunlight penetration is important. Otherwise, algae can make a layer on the top surface, and then the light won't be able to enter inside the lower layers. And at the bottom layers, you may have this anaerobic environment, so which is not good for algae. That's why we have these kind of raceway ponds, which have larger surface area and less depth. So generally we keep depth like approximately 1 meter kind of depth, even, so it is to avoid. And then we have, if you see, we have even one paddle wheel also. So this is required to continuously mix algae. Otherwise, to avoid these things, what we are doing is to even they help in the shading effect also, because as the density of cells increasing, it may create problem. It may have the shading effect. So all these things we need to optimize while designing these kind of reactors, right? So just simple feeding point will be after paddle wheel, and then we can harvest algal biomass from this point. So these are the simple things. And if you have more money, then you can bubble CO2 gas. If we are placing this these tanks next to your flue gas, like you have accessible flue gas source, that time you can bubble CO2 from your industrial exhaust also, right? So next slide. And these are also, we proposed these kind of, in the same research paper, we proposed 3-4 models. So these are out of that. So it depends like what kind of product you are looking forward. If it is related to nutrient supplement or like that time, we cannot grow algae in the open environment, because in open environment, it is very difficult to control the monoculture thing, right? So when we want a specific food kind of product, that time we usually go for closed reactors. And in closed reactors also there are different options available. Like if you see the first one, it is a tubular photobioreactor, and in the next one there are flat plate photobioreactors. So flat plate photobioreactors, they have their own advantages, like we have increased the surface area so that they can be directly exposed to sunlight, and this thickness we have reduced. So that's why we have put many plates adjacent to each other, so that so these things also we need to see that what size you want to expect, how much surface area, how much area is there in your industry. So those things matter, but these are all doable. Next. Now we talked about nitrates and phosphates source during wastewater treatment. Then let's talk about carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide concentration is continuously increasing. We know that even after this industrial revolution, carbon dioxide concentration increased, and then everyone know that a greenhouse gas, and it is harmful to us and to our environment, and climate change and these things, all of you know. That's why I'm not going into that detail that what kind of pollution problems are there. I'm just showing that what algae can do in solving all these issues. So we know that there is need to design certain technologies which can help us to efficiently this capturing of atmospheric carbon dioxide, right? So, and simultaneously, one thing is capturing or fixation of carbon dioxide, and another thing if we can do is if we can limit the emission. So both things we can target using algae. I'll tell you how. So microalgal species or algal species, they seems to be very promising when we talk about carbon dioxide capture and fixation, right? Even, they have various advantages over other CCS technologies which are available in terms of, because they have higher photosynthetic efficiency, they have very high growth rate, and just now we talked about valuable products which can be achieved out of it. Next slide. So this is very simple slide. What I've shown here, it is the photosynthetic process. You must be thinking that what I'm presenting, like it is photosynthesis, which is also applicable for algae. So with this carbon dioxide and water, it can it can survive, it can double its cells. So just wanted to show you this number, that 100 tons of algal biomass can fix approximately 180 tons of carbon. So this is the potential algal cells they can have, and this is how. And when we compare them with plants, when we talk about this carbon dioxide fixation and comparing them with plants, so through plants, it has been reported that only 3 to 6% a reduction is possible with plant photosynthesis, whereas, go to next slide. Whereas algal photosynthesis, it is responsible for almost 50% of the world's photosynthesis. So you just imagine the difference. The where is 3 to 6%, and if you compare it with 50% with algae, right? And I'm just comparing with plants because CO2 fixation, photosynthesis, these are all the terms and when plants come into picture. So when we compare their growth rate with plants, it is very much higher. And after this CO2 capturing, whatever biomass, I'll go to that next one. So let's first finish this slide. So this is the laboratory scale setup what we have at IIT Indore. There we grow and cultivate algae at under controlled temperature and light conditions, because here we are working on pure strains. We want to isolate new strains and want to maintain them. So all the maintenance, isolation, identification work need the maintenance of this environment, right? So that they don't behave differently, like this month something else is coming out and next month something else. So we want to control these conditions. And the beauty, another important benefit is microalgae can capture CO2 from different industries like power plants, steel, cement, oil, because it doesn't matter that what you are manufacturing in that industry, but it is mostly related to, it mostly targets CO2. But now you must be thinking in your mind that, madam, in addition to CO2 there must be other gases. So those gases are usually in trace content, like trace quantities of other gases are usually found, and even high temperature is another problem. So we have a range of so in nature, a range of algal species are available. Some are thermotolerant. So you have to select that algal species depending on your requirement. Next. So this is from our lab only. So this usually what we do, just briefly I want to tell you what kind of studies what we do in our lab. So we have so many species in our lab, and we want to check their potential one-to-one, that what is the potential, and even we are doing some enzymatic studies also, what is the role of different enzymes in these in controlling this, right? So and in this and we are directly giving them carbon dioxide. We are varying this flow rate, concentration, because one technology cannot be applied to all the industries depending on their flow rate, composition of CO2 percentage. Those things, they affect the overall process. That's why we are just monitoring and observing that, and even we are acclimatizing them also, right? So because when we these are all temporary acclimatization, so we usually give them under this environment where we are flowing 15% CO2, and after some times they will feel, okay, yeah, let me grow in this environment, kind of thing. So under these kind of stress, they usually survive and then behave well finally. So we are dictating these algal cells that you have to perform, you have to grow in this environment and then perform well. So this kind of, sometimes we are stressing them to do that. You can just imagine like that. So, but this, when we talk about all this, it looks so simple, easy, but these microorganisms, they encounter a number of challenges. Even if we talk about capturing carbon dioxide from the nearby environment or from exhaust gases, inside cell I'm talking about now, because that's what we are trying to see, that when I'm giving 15% CO2, what is happening inside. Let's go to next slide, Somi. Let me see if it is there. Yes, let's talk about this. So now that this part I have explained, I just want to show you this one. So this is also, we published recently only in 2017, this collaborative combined thing, because usually either we talk about this or this. So in this paper, we have talked about that what kind of challenges are there when it is exposed to CO2, right? So one of the important challenge is this enzyme Rubisco, right? So this Rubisco, the full form is like ribulose biphosphate carboxylase oxygenase. So we will call it Rubisco, right? So this enzyme is there, but has very low affinity for CO2. It doesn't like CO2, right? So it is, and additionally, it is very slow enzyme also. So I'm just saying, in these terms to enzymes, because they are challenges for us when we talk about CO2 sequestration or CO2 fixation, right? So, and another problem is in air, diffusion of carbon dioxide is very fast. So but it is an aqueous medium where algae will do its work. So that is another issue, that it has been reported that carbon dioxide diffuses 10,000 times slower as compared to its diffusion in air. So that is another issue, right? So these kinds of like enzymes, when CO2 enters inside cells, the enzymes also has problem with it. And outside like entry of CO2 inside cell, like if you see, there are various transporters available. So these are there. With the help of these transporters only, it enters into this. So usually this reductive photosynthetic process like RPP cycle is there, which helps algae to capture CO2, right? Yeah, but these transporters are very useful to us. So without these transporters, we cannot. So you can just read this paper. It is not very big one, and it will give you this feeling that okay, it is doable, and algae faces so many challenges, but still it can perform, right? So and it is important also, right? So pH also, when pH varies from acidic to basic or basic to acidic, that times also the efficiency of these transporters, it varies. So can we go to that slide? Like, yes, this one. So now we talked about these different inorganic precursors like phosphates and then nitrates, ammonium, and CO2. So all these precursors, how they give us our target molecules. I mean, that is also very important. So just briefly, I want to tell you about this. It's a very basic slide. It will tell you that phosphate, through the process of phosphorylation, we get nucleic acid. Everyone know that, which is an important part of our life. And so like this, we get nucleic acids, proteins, lipids, and even polysaccharides, right? So just for your information, next, I think. Now, how to dispose of algal biomass, because I compared it with your sludge, what you are getting for after secondary treatment, which can be that madam, after tertiary treatment also we will be getting huge quantity of algal biomass. So what are the methods available for the disposal? Next. But we don't want to dispose that. That is the thing, because this algal biomass, it's a valuable resource for us. And if I'm talking about just energy, then also we have different options available. Like we can get biogas or biomethane through anaerobic digestion, or we can even get biohydrogen. So there are researchers who are working on this part also through photobiological process, bioethanol through fermentation, and biodiesel through transesterification. So usually what we do in our lab at IIT Indore is we are targeting biodiesel, which can be produced from algae. Next. Pasted this graph to give you this feeling that how much is the efficiency, right? So you just see this. This is the oil yield out of algal cells, which can be achieved. So it is being reported long back in 2008. So this is the potential what algae has, and there are different crops which have been mentioned here, like oil, palm oil was also very famous for all kind of this, but you see the algal oil yield, 95,000 liters per hectare. This much can be achieved. And when I'm talking about per hectare, that time I'm not targeting either your fresh water or your agricultural land. That is the another beauty, that algae can be grown at any environment, like it doesn't need your agricultural field. Like fertile soil is not at all needed for algal cultivation. That you have just seen, that we can even grow it in reactors in open ponds. So that way it doesn't compete with your feeds, what do you say, food crops, right? So that problem is also not there. Next. So just now I told you that in our lab, we are targeting algal lipids for the production of biodiesel. And just briefly, I want to tell you that how it happens. So here we are growing algae, we are cultivating algae in under controlled conditions. And then, because this is what I'm talking about, batch scale studies in lab under controlled environment, how we do these things. So we screen them first, because what is the potential, because all algal species, they don't have equal competence. So some are good in lipids production, some are good in carbohydrates accumulation, others are good for proteins. So first step, always whenever you talk about some bioproducts, you need to screen them. You need to select the best student out of the class, right? So then only you can train that student further. So first point is screening. So what we do is we screen them profile. We screen them. Okay, this is the species which I want to work on, and then we have routine process, harvesting of biomass, extraction of oil extraction and processing it through transesterification, and then we get biodiesel. This picture I took, this car picture I took from Google, so please, I'm just acknowledging Google for it. So this is from Google only, and other pictures are from my lab. Next. Now, I told you that biodiesel production, extraction is very much possible to it, but it is, for this also algae face challenges. And when we put them under stress, that time they perform better. And it is known, it is the same case for us also, that more fats are deposited when we are under stress, and we have mechanism known for it, right? So we are not working on that mechanism, that how they can produce more lipids when they are under stress. So what kind of stress usually we give to them, that I can talk about, right? So first one is the nitrogen. So nitrates and phosphates are lovable to algae. They want some optimal concentrations of nitrates and phosphates, and we don't give them. We tell them that you please, we don't have nitrates for you, and you grow that time, and that time they start accumulating to these yellow drops. These are lipids inside their cells. Next. So this nutrient limitation, it induces lipid accumulation. So when I'm saying limitation, means we are reducing the concentration of nitrates and phosphates, how much they need. But overdoses also, it creates stress. But we don't prefer overdosage. Why? It increases our cost. When we are just removing that nutrient part from the growth process, it means we are also working on the cost reduction, right? So two benefits you can imagine from this, that when you reduce concentration of nitrates and phosphates, I'm talking about pure culture now, right? So I'm not talking about wastewater environment. So when we are growing them, that time we can reduce the concentration of nitrates and phosphates. So they will start accumulating more and more lipids, but their biomass production goes down. So if you completely remove this nitrate, that time also it is not good for overall process, because you want them to grow also. If they will grow, they will multiply, then only there are chances that they can accumulate lipids. So some optimal in between concentration we want, and it varies from species to species. There is not a universal rule or universal formula, okay, that you just give 1 gram per liter of nitrate or nitrate or phosphate to algae and it will perform best. It is not the case. It varies from species, and you have to work with your own algal species for these kind of things, right? And so this is what we were talking about, autotrophic growth, when algae can capture sunlight and that it can grow through the process of photosynthesis, right? But algae can also utilize and grow organic carbon source like glucose. Why we shifted to these kind of studies is we observed that like 12 hours there is light condition. During day we have light and we have night when the conditions are photosynthesis process is not on. So we wanted them to perform 24/7. That's how we switched some of our experiments to this direction, that organic carbon source, it can help help growing algae during even the dark cycles, right? Next. So this is, when you will read about biofuels or biodiesel, so you will read a term biorefinery. So biorefinery approach, so in this I tried, maybe this is the same paper in which we were talking about different reactor models. So in that only we proposed this biorefinery approach in a different sense. And even, starting from the scratch, that you have nutrients and what kind of process you have to follow when you are isolating algae. So isolation, purification, and then selection. And finally, you have to come out of your lab and go for large scale cultivation, harvest the biomass and extract the oil. So even after oil extraction, you will be so from this biomass you are getting, after oil extraction, you have the option that you can go for carbohydrates extraction and proteins extraction. So this is how it is all related. So this biorefinery approach, it is very promising tool when we talk about the sustainability of this whole process, in terms of like when we are targeting high value and commercialization level products. Because some of the time what happens is things looks very good when we are working at bench level, bench scale in our labs. But if we want to target commercialization level products, that time we need to think about a biorefinery approach, right? So an integrated approach is very much required. Like you extract everything out of algal biomass, like lipids, carbohydrates, proteins, and even if that algal biomass contains EPA, DHA, everything you just take out and use them for different applications, right? So, and biomass, even whatever is left, that time also. So every part you have to follow, that time you can improve the sustainability. Then, because this process is just, if I'm talking about biodiesel production using algae, it is not economically sustainable because of the lower yields. In addition to lipids, algal cells contain other things also, right? It is not lipids only that I can extract whole of the 100% of algal cells. They contain 100% lipids inside them, which will take out and convert them into biodiesel. It is not the case, right? So it is not economically sustainable if we are talking about just what a biodiesel production using algae. So this thing, like an integrated approach, is very much required, right? So next slide, let's see what is there. This is just the summary of this, that algal biodiesel is a good replacement for standard crop biodiesel. And even, there are species which can accumulate 70% of lipids inside cells, right? So that is why I was saying, because there are 30,000 species of algae available, and you need to find out that particular species which is important to you, right? And third point is no competition for land and space, which I explained you that how it can be done. And algae can survive in water of high salt content and wastewater and whatever, wherever you want to grow algae, it is possible, right? So that is there. And simple growth requirements, most important, that it is not very complicated, that you have to add this, that. It is not very complicated. This picture we took recently to ensure how beautifully we can see these lipids inside cells. So through confocal microscopy, we took this picture, and it is very good. And in addition to that, these are the advantages we have discussed just now. But Geon market research, like they have done a research and they have also analyzed and forecasted that algal global, I'm saying global algal biofuel market is growing very rapidly, and it will reach around USD USD 9.8 or maybe 10 billion by 2024. So that is the forecast they have they have forecast about the algal biofuel. So it is the potential algae has. Next. So till now we talked about biofuels, bioenergy, and then wastewater treatment. So any other applications, we like 2 years back, we asked this question to us, and then we started working on a different area, and we got a DST project also on that. Next slide. So this is that, like biosynthesis, because nanoparticles, I am in biosciences and biomedical department. So you can imagine that they all the time they talk about drug delivery. So they are looking forward to some nanoparticles which can carry those drugs to targeted these kind of things we always in some of the meetings we discuss like this. So that's how we also directed our research in that direction. We have just started with our inorganic nanoparticles, but for human body we always think about organic nanoparticles. That is the difference. But we started our research with the nanoparticles. So if algae can help in the biosynthesis of nanoparticles. Next thing, like with Narmada River, because it flows through Indore, and it is known, like it is very important for Indore. So we thought that let's see if we can use microalgae as biomarkers for environmental pollutants. It was a consultancy project also, that's why we got involved in it. And then so one of my students, he said that madam, I want to try these nanoparticles for extraction of lipids. And in most of the methods, if we talk about chemical methods, usually what we were doing is a transesterification or extraction of lipids out of algae using chemicals, or maybe most of the times we were killing algal cells. But he is trying that without killing cells, if we can extract lipids. So extraction of oil, or which is known as milking of lipids, without killing cells out of that cells, and then these cells are intact and they can again grow, multiply, and accumulate more and more lipids, right? So we are not killing cells in this method, right? So these are the targets that we want to go for a environmentally safe, eco-friendly method for nanoparticles production. And so these were the targets. Next slide. So this next slide will tell you the more detailed, will give you more detailed information what I was talking about. So we started with this environmental monitoring, and we selected Narmada River for this. And most important thing was what we selected is antioxidant enzymes, because you imagine that when yes, I have not tell that when algae will be in the outside environment, and if there are environmental fluctuations, so these fluctuations can create stress to algal cells, right? And if there are pollutants added in that environment, in some river water flowing body, that time more and more contaminants may be added to that. So these are the environmental fluctuations which can create stress to algal cells, and so the expression will be antioxidant enzyme. So these kind of studies we have done, like we estimated superoxide dismutase, and so SOD, CAT, MDA. So these are all antioxidant expressions we measure to observe that if in that water body, if it can act as bioindicator, right? And then this is the thing what he's doing for milking of cells for production or extraction of algae. So these kind of nanoparticles, like this is a picture from Google, but we have published one paper also, so that you can refer if you want. So these nanoparticles we have biosynthesized using algae. So it is simply a reduction process. So these nanoparticles we can use for the milking of cells for extraction of oil through photothermal effect, because when you provide algal biomass with these nanoparticles, that time during with photothermal effect, it will those lipids content will try to come out of the algal cells, and without killing we can do it, right? And then this biomass, whatever is left, can again be used. And what we are trying to integrate here is the wastewater treatment, because we always try to grow algae in wastewater to reduce, like our benefit in that is we want to reduce the cost. We don't want to give nutrients or fertilizers, so we want to reduce the cost. So that's why always we are looking forward to a particular wastewater or effluent for industry where we can club these kind of reactors we always work on. So this is the integrated reactor study in which he is trying to integrate wastewater treatment and growing algal biomass, and in the another section he has this milking going on. Next. So this is kind of a summary slide. What I was saying is, and what are the benefits out of algal biomass or whatever we discussed just now. So biofuels seems very simple and they have their own benefits. In my initial slides, I was saying two things, that carbon fixation is important, but if we can target on the less carbon dioxide emission also. So if you can imagine that whatever biodiesel is being produced through this process will be less CO2 emitting, right? So our fossil diesel is going down and those resources are going down. So we can go for like these kind of options. So algal species can fix your CO2 during the process of photosynthesis, and whatever biomass you are getting, you can make biofuels out of it, and which can be used to run your cars. And this thing everyone knows, that biodiesel, it can be used in same vehicles. It doesn't need the engine modifications and kind of things, right? And even recently we have started working on jet fuels also. That is also in very demand. Next. And these are all the facilities what we have at IIT Indore. Like this is the culture room, like where we are growing algae under controlled conditions of temperature and light. Then we came out of the lab and first we fabricated this flat photobioreactor with the 200. Even before that we even tried. These are those Bisleri bottles. If you see 20-liter capacity. So first we from 250 ml flask we went to 1 liter flask, and then we tried these 20-liter Bisleri bottles, water bottles, and then we went for this fabrication of 200-liter photobioreactor with the light inside it. And then finally, we constructed these raceway tanks of different capacities we have. This is 1000 liter capacity, and now we have bigger ones also, which is under a, what do you call it, under a shade kind of thing. So, for plants, we have greenhouses like that we have also constructed. So these are different tanks where we are cultivating algae for different applications. And recently we installed CO2 bubbling setup also in this. So earlier we were doing experiments only with the paddle wheel, that is, but now this CO2 fixation thing started. So for that, I'm thankful to Ministry of Earth Sciences. So they, from their project, we got this thing that we have CO2 bubbling setup for all these tanks, right? So overall, next slide, let's see. So this is the acknowledgement slide, but I want to summarize that. Overall, for production of 1 kilogram, because usually people ask me these kind of numbers, so that's why I keep ready myself, that someone can ask that how much diesel will use, how much water, and like these kind of numbers. So just summarizing this, that 1 kilogram of algal biodiesel, for production of 1 kilogram of algal biodiesel, we need approximately 4,000 kilograms of fresh water if we are growing them in fresh water. And if you are growing them in a treatment plant or wastewater, that time even, this water requirement can be reduced to 80%. And additionally, we need 300 grams of nitrogen and phosphate, right? So these are the numbers you may ask. And when CO2 comes into picture, that you have money to put CO2 bubbling setup, that time you can double lipid productivity. So this is advantage if you have CO2 bubbling facility in your industry or setup or lab or whatever. So this is also very important slide for me, because I want to acknowledge everyone who has supported me financially, or my students or staff. So Indian Institute of Technology, who has given me chance to work there and perform. Then we have projects and financial funding from Department of Science and Technology, then Department of Biotechnology, Ministry of Earth Sciences, and even we have students from DAD RISE. Every year, almost alternate years, we are getting students under DAD RISE. And we have project from German Academic Exchange Service, that is also mobility grant kind of project. And all my national and international collaborators, I want to acknowledge their support. And finally, industry partners, because without them, we cannot try our technologies or products. And most importantly, my students and staff or our department. Next, what is there? Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, Somveer. Do we have questions? Then we can discuss if we have.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for this elevating and enriched talk on every aspect of algae, from the very basic to the advanced techniques to grow algae and to exploit this algae for bioremediation purpose, for this fixation of carbon dioxide from the industrial emission, for biofuel production, and even the integration of nanotechnology with phycotechnology to utilize algae for the various kind of purpose beyond the conventional one and traditional purpose. So thank you very much for this talk. Now, can we take questions and queries? Basically, we have
Sure, please.
Queries from some of the students. Okay.
So shall I read all these questions?
Can I read for you, ma'am? Okay.
It's okay. It's visible to me also. I can read. So first question is from Monica Rani Verma, right? Or is it the first? No. I'm on the bottom actually. Which question?
Monica Mago, ma'am, from our own department. She has asked that if algae is used for treatment of contamination sites, that is phycoremediation, that will be done to dispose algae containing sequestered contamination, say like heavy metals. Can we do it, means sequestration of heavy metals with this algal species?
Yes, algal removal of heavy metals is very famous. There are so many studies. Even, you know, if I tell you my PhD was on removal of heavy metals only, like I targeted chromium that time. But it is possible. Yes, we can remove heavy metals, but you know that heavy metals are non-biodegradable and they are toxic also. So we cannot target, we cannot use them in the metabolism process, right? So it is not possible, but they can. There are so many mechanisms through which we can handle heavy metals using algae. It is possible.
Another participant, Monica Rani Verma, she asked that how has this corona time impact the production of algae in India for research purpose?
So these are two things. One is the research purpose. So everything, like if I'm talking about IIT Indore, we were logged, everything locked down, and then all the labs were closed. Students went back to their homes, right? So that's how our research was also stopped. And last month only, because 2-3 students were here only, they were allowed to enter inside the institute, and they revived all the cultures. So kind of because whatever happened to your bacterial species, same happened to algae only, all the cultures actually. But benefit is, it is not that easily spoiled, because they have longer growth curve, right? So usually they can easily grow they can easily survive in the same conditions for 2-3 months. It is not like bacteria, that because their doubling time is more for bacteria, and overgrowth happens, and then limitation of nutrients comes into picture, and those things happen. But with algae, it is not the case. But for us also, in 4-5 months, our algal cultures, they kind of spoiled, but we were lucky that we finally got all the pure cultures, right?
One of the participants, Neha Seni, she asked that after using of this algae for bioremediation purpose, for removal of these heavy metals, how we can dispose this algal biomass?
Yes, but I explained this, that there is no need to dispose of. And still, if you don't want to further go for the usage of that biomass, and you want to dispose of, it is very eco-friendly, similar to plants, you can go for it. But you should be knowing your algal species. It should not be producing toxins, right? So that thing you should be knowing clearly what you are disposing of in the environment, right? That's how you cannot throw things here and there. But as such, there are no specific methods or protocols needed for the disposal, because it is very much environment friendly.
Thank you, ma'am. One of the questions that came from our program chair and convener, and even the chairman of civil engineering, Professor M.L. Agrawal, he asked that this pond must have a minimum 8 feet water or more. Is it appropriate to call a water body have 8 feet water a pond?
Which pond actually we are talking about? We have different versions available, like open ponds or reactors, closed reactors we are talking about, or what we are...
Madam, actually in villages, regarding say they are having ponds. So
Okay.
ponds are having normally a lot of depth. But in civil engineering, we say the water depth must be at least 8 feet or more than 8 feet. only then a structure is called a pond.
Yes, yes. So, okay, in that sense, I can explain it like this, that when we knew that algae is important, like I'm talking about many years back, that we got to know, okay, algae is useful, and a scientist or researcher, they observed this layer of algae or algal species in our water ponds, which is as per your definition, like, or civil engineering definition, that those ponds which were having 8 feet water depth, and like those were ponds, actual ponds, right? What we have, natural ponds, and there also algae exist. So this like we started collecting algal species there, and then um, we brought them to our wastewater treatment plants. In treatment plants also, we have oxidation ponds and different sections, we have open ponds. So first thing, they tried growing that algae and observing the behavior of algae in those ponds. That's why, you know, this term is carrying forward to open ponds. This is kind of open ponds, we said. And same kind of term we took it for the raceway ponds, which are not 8 feet in depth, definitely, but still, you know, they are known as raceway ponds. We just increase the surface area and decrease the depth, right? So it is not technically pond in that sense.
Madam, I can predict whatever pond you are saying, that is experimental pond.
Yes, yes, it is not
Right.
natural pond.
Right. Thank you, madam.
Yes,
Ma'am, there is one question from my side also. Can I ask it?
yes, please.
Ma'am, basically, when we talk about this control of emission or diverting this emission, which contain carbon dioxide also for this growth of algae. So in that case, when we divert this emission, industrial emission, then lots of contaminants are also along with this carbon dioxide. So means how this algae behave in such a system when lots of contaminants, like when we talk about thermal power plant, then mercury is always there, which is very much hazardous. So in this hazardous situation, when we divert completely the emission to the ponds which are utilized for growing algae, then how these emission affect this growth of algae?
So there are, you know, different strategies, Dr. Somvir. One is most easy is, you know, the composition of your flue gas, and you try acclimatizing your strains in lab first, right? You just tell algal species that this kind of environment will be there when you will go in the actual real environment. And so that time there will be no problem. If you don't have money, otherwise, you know, you can go for the treatment first. So both the options, you know, already if sometime you get a time to visit, already Nalco, Odisha, like there are already in real sense, you can see how they are doing carbon fixation using algae. So they have already installed these kind of plants.
Actually, I frequently visited these thermal power plants, and when I go for the composition of this emission, then mercury is always there, various kind of heavy metals. They also insist with this emission. So we need to treat.
Right, but yeah, we can discuss this in detail also. Even, you know, if concentrations are less, that time there will not be problem, because, you know, in wastewater and water environment, we usually work with the water kind of environment. So in water also we have these heavy metals present, you know, that in different wastewater. Even when I'm talking about industrial effluent treatment, that time you can imagine the scene, that how much hazardous waste you can expect, but algae can handle that. I can take guarantee.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am,
Yes.
another question is there, means like when we talk about this mass production of algae, then you have also discussed various pond system for the mass production of this algae. So is there any chance for contamination when we go for this mass production? In lab
Yes,
condition, we
yes.
can control this contamination. Then how we can control this contamination when we go for this mass production?
Yes, there are definitely chances. That's why I told you, if you are targeting food supplements or food products, that time you should not go for open ponds type of cultivation. That time we prefer closed photobioreactors. But if you are targeting biofuels or other things, that time you can go for open ponds, and there will be contamination by other species, right? So we have a procedure how to control it. That usually, your initial biomass, we can increase the initial inoculum size, or we, if because it is a long process also, we don't harvest the whole biomass every seventh, or every 2 days we collect or harvest biomass. That time also you need to see how much you have to harvest. So proper cells you need to leave in the biomass, so that they can dominate on other species, right? So even I have not discussed that we are trying algae bacteria consortium kind of thing also. And you can imagine that algae grows slow and the bacteria multiplies very fast. So how they can be in the consortium, but it is possible.
My next question will be on the same ground, that can we use the different cultures like bacterial and algae in order to remediate various kind of contaminants? Ma'am,
Yes. So,
yes, please.
yeah. So algae bacteria consortium, it means when we ask two microorganisms to grow together, it means we want a symbiotic relationship, right? And between algae and bacteria, if you see overall, there is symbiotic relationship, because bacteria need oxygen and which is being released by algae during the process of photosynthesis. So like that, they are symbiotically related to each other. But that again, which species will be able to grow with which one of bacteria, that you have to see, right? So there is again no universal rule, that, because we have different wastewater environment, different environment, outside climatic condition, different bacterial species, different algal species, so many diverse environments, so there cannot be a single rule.
True. There is
Yes.
one question from our participant side also, means Charu Patwal. She asked that, is there any process or way that algae can be used for carbon sequestration, and that will be, what will be the limitation of that process?
What is the process? We like this carbon fixation process is itself a process which can be used for carbon fixation from industries using algae.